Okay, so we something that's kind of been in the background of all this and is a big part of it that we haven't fully gotten to yet is the involvement of tribes and First Nations with this as a traditional food and as it kind of seems like from the outset of this project all the way through the end of it, it seems to me like you deliberately made that a kind of built-in part of the project. Can you tell me about the involvement of tribes and First Nations in this work, or how you communicated with them, or anything along the way?
Yeah, because of the workshops that I had taught, and one of them I co-taught, I had my seaweed sisters, and my seaweed sisters come from the Muckleshoot tribe, the Squaxin Island tribe, Lower Elwha, Lummi Nation, and so I should say Lower Elwha Clallam, the Lummi Nation, and I was very inspired by their work in traditional foods and teaching traditional foods, bringing that revitalization of Coast Salish food culture to each individual community kitchen and bringing those foods in to serve the elders. And so I thought, okay, I need your help, seaweed sisters. I would like to harvest these seaweeds and test them out. They're like, yes, we'll do it. We'll help you. And pretty soon they started to open doors to more and more tribes. And Joe was like, hey, why not do the whole Salish Sea? I mean, why just do the lower Salish Sea? Why not do cross border too? And so I had these connections on the other side of the border because some of these people had also come to workshops that were sponsored by on the US side of the Salish Sea, but I had Canadian nation members come in to the workshops. So the door kept opening up the inside passage until there were 18 tribes and First Nations that all said, yes, we'd be very interested in your study. Please come and collect seaweed. And some of the tribes and First Nations would meet me at the beach, and we'd go out in a boat, or we'd hand sample of the 43 sites. 21 of, I think 20 of these were all harvested with First Nations and tribes.
Nice.
And of the other sites, I just go out in my kayak or be on foot myself, and I might meet a tribal member at the beach, and they'd say, you can harvest between this spot and that spot because there are some sacred sites on either side. So we just want you to be respectful.
Yeah.
But all I could say is it was extremely important to me to do this in a sensitive way, to be a white scientist and to be going into the unceded traditional territories of all these tribes and nations without their permission, without their kind of knowledge, and without a little bit of their input, is not the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to go in a way that was what do I want to say, a very respectful way that I would do with my own grandparents if it was their land. Anyways, I wear all the time when I was working a small cedar basket around my neck, and in it has seaweed from one of the chiefs, and he gave me this seaweed early on in the study, and this basket like hangs over my heart when I am working on one of the things that happened once after we harvested the seaweed and it went off to NOAA and to the UC Davis toxicology lab and up to Axis lab up in Sydney. After the seaweeds went to these labs and then the results started to come back, we would look at these results, Noah and Joe and the people on my master's research committee, we'd look at these results together down in Seattle, and I would have this basket by my heart because this study pushed the envelope of my knowledge so far beyond a wilderness guide writer. Okay, I'm a wilderness guide writer teacher, but suddenly I'm have to understand the language of toxicology and also understand studies that are done all over the world on these chemicals, so I can compare the chemicals in fucus in Greenland and France and further south, because it's further south, but compare all that to the Salish Sea seaweeds. And so the learning curve was like an arrow to the sun. And
it's really impressive and admirable. It's super cool.
Oh, I had my times when I just wanted to just cry, but I knew I wouldn't give up.
I mean, to be doing that's hard, you know, all of that's hard, and it's like a little bit out of you're in a little bit deeper water than what you've been in your past. And then the sort of part where you're respecting this process so much and respecting the tribes and First Nations in it, and not just kind of parachuting in, doing your science and coming out. It's you start to understand why that's 7 years.
Yeah, it's like community-based research takes time.
Yeah.
And community-based research where you share the results with the tribes and First Nations takes more time too. But it's essential. And it's how science should be. Almost every place across the United States and Turtle Island and North America, all that, we are standing on oftentimes unceded traditional lands. And when we do this research, there are nations that this was their and is their traditional territory still. And so to get the people involved who, in particular, when you're working with a traditional food like I am, to get their permission to go ahead and share the results and then share them with the public is not only respectful, it's almost I don't know what I want to say. It is the way that the heart and the mind work together on research. And it's not about getting a publication out. It's not about getting, the light shine on you. I mean, there were so many community members. There's probably like over 75 people that worked on this minimally. And I could never have done this study without the 18 tribes and First Nations, without all the people at NOAA, without the help from SeaDoc, without the help from Western Washington University, the Border Policy Research Institute. It's like, I remember hearing it takes a village to write a book. Well, man, oh man, it takes a huge geography to pull off a study like this, and many, many competent minds and hearts. And so wearing this beautiful basket with the seaweed in it from one of the chiefs, as I was moving towards sharing the results, I remember calling up Jamie Donatuto and saying, can you advise me on how a white settler should do research in Indian country? And she said, I would be happy to. Do you really want me to tell you how it should be done? I mean, how we would hope it would be done? I said, yes, don't hold anything back. And so with her advice, I shaped how I would share the results. So Jamie said, one of the things you need to include is a PowerPoint with an emphasis on pictures, with your voice in the background, with non-scientific language, so that it can be understood by people that aren't toxicologists, but by all of us, that speak in normal language, typically unspecialized language. And you should have a summary, a written summary in non-scientific language that might only be 3 pages long. And then you would have the scientific article draft. This would be something that you put on a thumb drive, and you have all the raw data. That's the other thing. You give the tribe or the nation back the raw data on a on a thumb drive.
Right.
And if you don't have a thumb drive, then you do it over a link online, is what I ended up doing. That is what you send, but that's not always what. With COVID, it's very challenging to get everybody's attention. So just sending people a link is not sometimes enough. And so what I would do is I would offer to do a presentation. And so I did a number of presentations to chiefs and council, sometimes to a number of people within the departments of natural resources within the tribes. Sometimes they were tribal scientists. Sometimes they were fisheries folks that had helped me harvest the seaweeds. But I would share the results on Zoom too. And that was not done with every single nation or tribe, but it was done with those that had requested it. I was always very grateful when people would say, Thank you for devoting so much time to answering this question. We have been thinking about growing seaweeds, and this will help us. Or just thank you for doing this. We eat these traditional foods. We're not eating so much seaweed yet, but we want to eat more. Now we feel more comfortable. All those kinds of words affirmed for me that 7 years, it's not about the time. You do the study in the best way possible, given the respectfulness that you want to have at the forefront.